Armen and Levack, 104.5 The Team, 104.5theteam.com. Proud to have on former Giants head coach Jim Fassel with us on the team. Does some stuff for NFL Network these days, living in Vegas. And Coach, it's funny because I was talking to you earlier this morning. We were going back and forth on the phone, and you said, heck, I've been up since 4 a.m. We have Herm Edwards on every single week, and he tells us the same thing. I had Herm one time called me at 5 a.m. and woke me up. And he goes, you're wasting the day. Get out of bed. What is it about you coaches? That habit just never leaves you, does it?
No, it doesn't. You know, you get used to it. I mean, when I was coaching the Giants, every morning I got up at 5, okay? And I have an alarm sometimes because Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I get up at 5 in the morning and usually left the office around midnight. Oh. So you're used to not a lot of sleep. You just are used to it, and you're definitely used to getting up early.
And that never leaves you because obviously you don't have to have that same sleep regimen. You know, once you guys are doing the media thing and you're not in coaching anymore, but it just never leaves you.
Well, that's right. Yeah, it never leaves you. I've always been an early riser, but you know, it was always funny for me that when I would hire, let's say I had a player like Charlie Way, okay, who's now in the NFL office. You know, they wanted to go into coaching, and not necessarily just Charlie, but I mean a number of players that had an injury, they couldn't play anymore, they wanted to start coaching, so I kept them on as just kind of a beginner, you know, helping out doing things. And it was 2 to 3 weeks into the season, I would talk to them and they'd say, how do you do this? I mean, I'm so tired, I can't even believe it. Getting up early, staying up late, you know, and it's just, you got to get your body ready for it.
This is Jim Fassel, former Giants head coach with Armen and Levack on 104.5 The Team.
Coach, I gotta say hi for somebody. Every week we have Derek Brown, first-round draft pick tight end out of Notre Dame for the Giants. When we told him you were gonna join us today, he was very sad he couldn't be here. He wanted us to convey his hello.
Well, tell him hello for me. He's a great guy. Great guy.
And one thing he said about you, Coach, too, he talked about how great of a guy you are. He was talking about towards the end of his career, he was just trying to find a gig somewhere. And he had called, he said, I called every coach I knew, about a dozen or so coaches and GMs. And he goes, Jim Fassel was the only guy that took the time to call me back and say, hey, I just wanted to let you know, we just don't have the cap room for you, but thank you for calling. And Derek was telling us, he goes, I'll never forget that moment.
Well, you know, he was a good person. And I liked him as a person, a player, everything. But, you know, that's the hardest part in coaching in the NFL. It's you like a guy, you want him on your team, but then how does it fit cap-wise? And sometimes it's got to be, I just can't afford you. I got to get a younger guy that's less expensive because we've moved in certain directions.
Coach Fassel with Armen and Levack on the team. All right, Coach, so we're looking at the New York Giants this year. It's been kind of tough year so far for Giants-Jets fans. And looking at the Giants, do you a lot of the reason to their struggles this year, how much does it have to do with this new offense, and then how much does it have to do with a lack of personnel, which is what we've been talking about in the media this week?
Well, you know, I think it's a combination. I know Jerry Reese real well, and he is an excellent evaluator of talent. So I can't go down everything because even when you watch the game and mistakes are made and things happen wrongly, you don't know if the player didn't fulfill his assignment. The only thing I know for sure, and I'm not up to speed with the last couple of games, but the games they won the turnover battle. The games they lost the turnover battle. Now, it doesn't have anything to do with personnel. And right now they're -1, which is not good because if you look at the turnover ratio, the teams that are in the plus are the teams that have records. I mean, the top 2 teams are New England, Arizona, Cleveland. You know, those are the teams that are, you know, +12. The Giants are -1. You're not going to win with a minus turnover ratio.
How do you fix something like that, Coach? Is that a motivational thing? Is that a more practice thing? Like, how do you get in the players' heads to not turn the ball over?
Well, the thing is, I always believe that you emphasize it all the time. You emphasize it. It's the number one determinator on who's winning and who's losing is the turnover ratio in a game. Okay? Now, you can coach it all you want, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. You know, you emphasize it, you practice it, you teach it, you emphasize it. and you still turn the ball over. But right now, I don't know the reason. It could be they don't teach it as well, they don't concentrate on it well, the players don't concentrate, whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, they're minus, and that's. I would say this. I haven't studied the last 2 or 3 games, but the first so many games I followed it, and every game they lost the turnover ratio, and every game they won, they had a plus.
Jim Fassel, former Giants head coach with Armen and Levack on the team. Coach, I know you said you haven't been able to study the film on the last couple of games, but have you gotten a look at Odell Beckham Jr.? He's a guy that, obviously did not get much practice time heading into the season because he was hurt, and now with Victor Cruz out, so much pressure on him to perform, and he seems to be rising up to that pressure in the media and on the field as well. Just curious as to your first takes on this young rookie.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to watch him a lot. My son's a special teams coordinator at the St. Louis Rams.
Right.
So I'm traveling to games, and so I don't get to see a lot of him. I've seen him play. I think the guy's outstanding, and that's how you find the next guy up, is that, you give him a chance to play, and all of a sudden he surprises you, and he has. He has done a good job.
Coach, you brought it up. I got to switch gears real quick and ask you, how gutsy is that kid of yours calling all those special teams plays that nobody sees coming?
Oh, that's amazing. That punt return they had against Seattle was amazing. I didn't know because, my deal with my son, we always talk about football. I talk to him almost daily. But the rule is I don't want to hear about anything special that you've got in the game plan. I wouldn't tell him when I was coaching, and he was a young coach. I wouldn't tell him because, it's a Sergeant Schultz. I know nothing. And that's the way I want to keep it. But, it was a great design play. And then you got to hand it to the players that executed it. And then, the fake punt at the end of the game, when they were backed up, and if they didn't complete it. And I was talking to the kicker last week when we were at the 49er game, and he says, you can't warm up on the sideline. And I know that. You can't have the punter warming up his arm. Everybody sees it, and now they're expecting it. So he has to go in and throw a perfect pass without any warm-up. So it just all came, and John has always liked special trick plays on special teams. Jeff Fisher endorses it. He really is involved with the special teams.
And how much of a gut feeling is that what it is when trying to figure out, obviously the situation comes into play, but knowing whether or not, okay, do we go with this or not, is a lot of that just a gut and all right, we got to do it?
Well, I think I talked to Jeff before the game a long time. And, you go into the game and you're feeling like I better have my gun loaded with anything I need to do as a trick play, a special play, or something, in case things aren't going well. And, Jeff had to, I didn't even ask my son. Jeff, did he give you the go-ahead, or did you call that fake punt at the end of the game? And I didn't ask him. I don't want to know. But I'm thinking that Jeff's an experienced head coach. He had to give him the green light. Now, the punt return for a touchdown, I don't think he had to give him a green light. That's not as dramatic a play. It ended up great. But, Jeff Fisher likes special teams. That's why he hired John right off the bat when he got the job at the Rams, because I think they think alike. We'll be solid, but if we have to make a dramatic play, go with it.
You probably answered this question a million times in your life, but it's really, as I look at what's going on in New York, you talk about your son John having guts. You're the man who stepped up in 2000 and said, hey, I'm all in. This team goes to the playoffs. Did you know right then and there that you just had the talent and you needed those guys to know you believed in them? Like, how do you go out and throw your whole coaching life on the line like that and not be afraid?
Well, when you get into coaching, you learn. Hopefully all coaches do that, but your job's always on the line. I remember talking to Pat Hanlon, who's the PR guy there, and he was probably one of my best friends. He was so good to me and advised me and stuff, and he said, Jim, you're putting your job on the line. I said, my job's always on the line. And what I wanted to do was show my team that I have confidence in them, and I didn't want the media in New York, which is very powerful, that they're going to dictate what we're going to do and control the thoughts of my team. And that's why I came out. It didn't bother me. I knew we could play better. But the hidden story behind it was we were playing terrible on special teams. We played terrible against the Detroit Lions. We got beat at home, and I cut the MVP of special teams from the year before. And, boy, that sent a message in the locker room.
Well, that's interesting, Coach Fassel, with this Armen and Levack on the team. Coach, the New York media, so many times we talk about how some guys just aren't made for that. You know, most recently, Akeem Nicks, we questioned if he just didn't have what it took maybe mentally to deal with the New York media. Mark Sanchez now flourishing in Philadelphia. At least we think he's going to flourish as a starting quarterback for the next 7 to 8 weeks. How difficult is it in New York with the media as a player and a coach on a weekly basis talking to those guys?
Well, the thing you got to do is you can't let them see you sweat. All right, when times get tough, if they see you sweating, they're pulling the knives out. But I had a great relationship with the media. I mean, I really did. I think I answered their questions. I respected what they do. I mean, the two things I told them, I said, listen, I guarantee you I can't do your job. If there's one thing in my life that it would take me 2 weeks to write an article, okay? And then the other thing I told them, and you have to tell them this at the right time. You can't, when the heat's on, you can't tell them this. But when good times are going, I said, hey, listen, we all learned how to write when we were 8 years old, okay? Most of us moved on to better things. And, they laughed about that and stuff like that. But, I think if you treat the media with respect, and some people look at them as adversarial, I didn't look at them that way. They had a job to do. Their job is to either say we're doing good or criticize us. So I never let that get in the way.
Jim Fassel, former Giants coach with Armen and Levack on the team. Coach, last week Michael Strahan was given his Hall of Fame ring and honored at the Meadowlands. What do you remember coaching for Michael Strahan? What jumps out to you when you hear Michael Strahan?
The thing I cherish is that I know Michael Strahan on and off the field, and I know what he meant to our team. And he was a committed player, and he wanted to win. And he didn't sit around criticizing other players. He didn't shoot his mouth off. That was part of my rules, and those players understood it. But not only the greatness on the field, he was great off the field in the locker room to lead the young guys. And my last year there, when we were decimated with injuries, we'd lost the whole offensive line except for one guy, and that he wouldn't take a play off in practice. When you got an all-pro player, when you're going, we lost Kerry Collins because of the offensive line. He got hurt, this and that. We had so many injuries that, a lot of times an all-pro player will say, I can't go today. He never did that. He played every play in the game. He played every practice play. And I just have a lot of respect for how he had a work ethic.
Coach, through your career, you clearly one of the I'll give you the title of quarterback guru. As you look at what's going on in the other New York team for the Jets, the handling of Michael Vick and Geno Smith, what would you do? I mean, do you look at Geno Smith and do you think that's a guy who's pretty much done, or is that a kind of guy that you could kind of put together a regimen that makes him a starting quarterback one day?
I would have to sit down and talk to the guy and see what's in his head, because he's not playing well. He's playing like a young quarterback that's not sure what he's doing, where he's going with the ball, where the receiver's breaking it off. He just looks like he's confused out there. Now, I can't get into their head and know their offensive system and all that stuff, but he just does not look like a confident guy in where he's going with the ball. And, what I talked about earlier, the New York Jets are last in the league with a minus 15 turnover ratio. I mean, nothing's happening for you at that level. If you got that many turnovers, and he's been the guy that's primarily done it, he just looks confused to me. I'd have to meet the kid and sit down and talk to him and get in his head and find out what he's thinking. What is going wrong that you need to correct? And then let him tell me, well, I'm confused, I don't read it real well, all those things, before I can really judge his talent.
So in your experience, a guy like this, the majority of the issue is going to be mental.
Yeah, I think so. Well, specifically with quarterbacks.
Okay.
It applies to all players, but a quarterback, if he's confused and he's not sure where he's going or what the guy's route's going to run, and because the quarterback is so subject to all kinds of stuff. If you can't get a run game going, it makes it hard to throw the football. If you can't run the ball, then the protection is hard. And I'm not sitting in the room and seeing that the receiver should have run the route at 15, but he ran it at 10, and then you overthrew him. So that stuff I don't know. It just looks like to me when he drops back in the pocket, he's not sure where he's going with the ball.
Well, Coach Fassel, and it's funny you mentioned the turnover ratio as well. A lot of that has to do with the defense, who has only created 3 turnovers so far this season, worst in the league, and they're on pace to have the worst in the history of the NFL. The Texans last year had 11. When you look at a Rex Ryan defense that is known for creating those turnovers, known for getting for the quarterback, I mean, we're just trying to figure out how they have such a talented defensive line, and they have not been able to create more turnovers than that on the year.
Well, yeah, I mean, turnovers come from hitting the quarterback in the pocket, and I don't know their numbers on that. Stripping the ball, emphasizing it. A lot of times it's emphasizing it. But again, you can emphasize it and it doesn't happen. My first year in the New York Giants, we were the only team that was predicted to finish last place in the NFC East. In any division, we were the only one. Unanimously, we were picked of all the magazines and everything else to be last place, all right? At the end of the day, we were the first team to ever never lose a game in the NFC East, and I can tell you the reason. Point blank. We had a plus 25 turnover ratio.
Wow.
And that's how we won. We weren't the best team, but I've always told the teams, the best team doesn't win. It's the team that plays the best. And the number one starting point was turnover ratio, and we drilled it and drilled it and drilled it and drilled it. And then the guys caught on to it. But plus 25 is unheard of. But that's the only way we won.
Coach Jim Fassel, former Giants coach, now lives in Nevada and is on. You'll see him on NFL Network from time to time, does radio appearances around the country. Coach, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you and hope to have you on again in the future, if that's okay with you.
All right, guys, good to be with you.
And, Coach, if you want me to come hang out with you in Vegas, I'm willing.
Well, we have a home. My wife and I have a home in Vegas and Manhattan Beach, so you can take your pick.
Beautiful.
You're going to regret that.
Well, that Manhattan Beach house I bought in 1995 when I went to the Raiders, okay? And the day that I'm signing the closing papers, the day I'm signing to close and buy the house, Al Davis says we're moving back to Oakland.
That's typical Al Davis for you.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Coach, thanks for your time. We really appreciate it.
All right, thanks.
We'll be in touch.
Coach.
Have a great weekend.